Meeting of the Wheat Ridge Planning Commission to order. Could we have a roll call of the members, please?
Derek Bowden. Alan Bucknam.
Present.
Steve Timms is absent. Scott Ohm.
Here.
Emery Dorsey. Amanda Weaver.
Here.
Donna Kimsey is also absent. And Pam Olson.
Here.
Thank you.
Can we all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next item up is to approve the order of the agenda.
Mr. Chair, make a motion to approve the order of the agenda.
Second.
Can we vote, please? Hold on. Which one am I on here? Okay. Sounds good. Next item up is the approval of the minutes for March 5th, 2015.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to approve the minutes of March 5th, 2015.
Second.
And please vote. If you weren't here, you can abstain. Oh, we had a second from Commissioner Weaver.
That motion is approved. Well, there is a tie there.
It's 3-0 with 3 abstained.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item up on the agenda is the public forum. This is the time for any person to speak on any subject not appearing on the agenda. So if you're here to speak in relation to any of the items that we will be hearing today, any of the 2 cases, please save your comments for that time. But if there's anything else anyone would like to come up and say, do we have anything? Okay, great. Next item up is the public hearing. We have 2 cases today. The first case is case number WS1501, an application filed by David J. Mann requesting approval of a 3-lot subdivision with 2 lot width variances for property zoned residential R2, located at 7193 West 32nd Avenue. And before we get started, Commissioner Bowden has a disclosure he'd like to make.
So when I was looking at the property earlier this evening, I did have an interaction with the applicant, Mr. Mann. It was a strictly factual interaction. We just talked about the issues at hand that we're going to discuss here tonight. There's nothing during our interactions that would make me believe that my decision tonight here is anything, is a biased decision at all. So very impartial. And like I said, there was a strictly factual interaction between myself and Mr. Mann.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that Commissioner Bowden remain to hear the case based on his disclosure.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, could we vote on that motion, please?
I'm sorry. Let me clear that again.
Okay, please vote again. Okay. All right, great. So is the city ready?
Get the lights to dim down so the screen is more visible.
Okay.
Good evening. For the record, Lauren Michalak. I'm a planner with the City of Wheat Ridge Community Development Department, and I will be presenting case number WS1501. I would like to enter into the public record the contents of the case file, the zoning ordinance, the subdivision regulations, and this digital presentation.
So entered. Thanks.
Thank you. The property is within the City of Wheat Ridge. All appropriate notification and posting requirements have been met, and the Planning Commission does have jurisdiction to hear this case. We'll start with just a quick aerial to orient you to the property. This is a aerial from about a year ago. North is to the top of the screen, and the subject property, 7193 West 32nd Avenue, is outlined here in bright blue. It is a corner lot with frontage on 3 streets, so you can see 32nd Avenue down here to the south, Teller Street running north-south, and West 32nd Place to the north. It's located in the southeast quadrant of the city, not too far from where we are tonight, actually. The site is just shy of 1 acre in size. It's about 39,000 square feet. It's about 4 times larger than the average property in the zone district and in this neighborhood. This image shows several buildings on the site, and I do want to note that most of those accessory structures have been removed relatively recently. They were older buildings. There is a single-family home on the property that we'll look at a little bit later down here, sort of in the middle southern portion that remains. That's an old farmhouse that was originally built in 1899. It's one of the oldest homes in the area. This next image is an excerpt from the city's zoning map, and so the different colors on the screen represent different zone districts. The property is zoned residential 2, and that's that yellow-green color that's covering most of the slide here. R2 is a zone district that allows for low-density residential uses that include single-family and 2-family duplexes. Most of the neighborhood that's zoned R2 are single-family, but there are a few duplexes scattered in that neighborhood. The orange color that's running off the screen is R3. That's a multifamily zone district that allows for single-family duplex and multifamily development. And this darker color, PRD, stands for Planned Residential Development. In this case, this planned development includes a single-family duplex and condominium units. So a pretty good variety of different types of housing options in the area. The case you're hearing tonight is a subdivision plat, and just a quick refresher on what that is and isn't. The subdivision regulations are found in Article 4 of the Zoning Code, and a subdivision plat is a technical document. It's a document that reconfigures or creates lots, tracts, or parcels. It removes or defines property lines. In this case, we're creating new property lines. Subdivision plat allows the city to evaluate and either request new right-of-way or give back right-of-way to adjacent properties. It's also a time where we evaluate civil documents, so traffic reports, potentially drainage reports. A plat is the document that is preparing a property for development. What a plat is not doing, it's not changing the zoning. It does not affect the zoning or the permitted uses. It simply enables development that is already allowed to happen based on that existing zoning. The other thing that plats don't do, we're not looking at site design or building placement. You will see the existing home in relation to lot lines, but no new building footprints. And so with that, we'll go ahead and look at the subdivision plat, which in this case is 2 sheets. This is the cover sheet. I know it's illegible from where you're standing, but the first sheet is essentially declarations. It's general notes. It's a surveyor's certificate, and you can see several signature lines that, if and when approved, will be signed by the owners, the city, the planning commission, and the county. The second page is really the focus of tonight's meeting, and that's the graphic depiction of the boundary of the subdivision and the proposed lot lines. We'll zoom in a little bit so that's more legible. These blue lines show the boundary of the parcel as well as the new interior lot lines that are being proposed. The owners of the property include an extended family, the applicant and his wife and his parents. And in terms of the creation of the new lots, Lot 2 is where that existing farmhouse will be located and will accommodate the applicant's parents. And Lot 3 is a lot that will be eligible for a new single-family home at which the applicant and his family would reside. And Lot 1 is sized to accommodate either a single-family or duplex property, but at this point there are plans to develop it. If you've seen the site, it's being used as a garden right now. The other element that you're seeing on this page, there's a lot of surveying images and lines, but the one thing that is common to subdivision plats are these dashed lines that parallel the perimeters. Those are the easements. This plat is establishing standard perimeter easements for drainage and utilities of 5 feet and 10 feet in width. What just appeared on the screen are some red shaded areas. There is a need for some right-of-way dedication to be provided to the city by the plat document. West 32nd Avenue here on the southern end of the subdivision is designated in the city's bike and pedestrian plan as a bike ped route, and currently it's substandard in width to accommodate those future improvements. When new lots are created through a subdivision process, the city reviews adjacent streets to see if they meet current standards, and in this case, we are requesting an 8-foot right-of-way dedication. So the new property line will be at the blue line, and this red area will become part of the public right-of-way. What you see out there today will not likely change until the city's ready to invest in that infrastructure. And there is a small right-of-way dedication up at the corner. Our current standards require that corner properties have a rounded property line, so we could accommodate potentially curb ramps in the future. As I mentioned, one of the things that we look at when we're reviewing subdivision plats is to make sure that they conform, or how they conform with the underlying zoning. So what you're seeing on this image are the R2 zoning standards and the proposed lot size and widths. There are 2 variances that are being requested in association with this plat, and that is the reason that Planning Commission is hearing this case. I should have mentioned 3-lot subdivisions are eligible for administrative approval, but only if they meet all of the zoning standards. In this case, because there are 2 requests for lot width variances, it will be heard by you tonight and then also by City Council in about a month. So on the left side, what you're seeing are the standards for duplex and single family. So we'll start with Lot 1. Lot 1 is proposed to have 141 feet of frontage on 32nd Place and about 89 feet on Teller, and it's sized at 12,500 square feet. That it far exceeds the single-family requirement, so certainly eligible in the future for single-family home. And it also exceeds the minimum standards for a duplex property, which are 12,500 square feet. The reason that there's 2 lot widths shown is because corner lots have a unique situation in that there are 2 standards that apply to those widths. Okay. I believe the microphone is on, so I'm not, we'll try and speak up. So the frontage on 32nd Place is certainly meeting that 100-foot lot width. Corner lots are required to have 80 feet on the side as well, and that is being provided. So Lot 1 is conforming. Lot 2 and Lot 3 are the subject of the variances, and that is the lot width, the frontage on 32nd Avenue that is slightly substandard. It's something that staff is supporting and we think makes sense in this scenario, and I'll explain that in a moment. But in terms of size, you can see that lots 2 and 3 far exceed that 9,000 square foot requirement for single family homes. They're generously oversized. Lot 3 will have a 2-foot variance request, so it's 73 feet in width instead of 75. Lot 2, again, is a little bit unique. It's 156 feet wide on Teller, which again far exceeds the 75 foot or 80 feet that's required for a single family home. But on 32nd Avenue, that lot width is 68.5 feet, so it's slightly narrower than what would be required for a new single family lot. This next image is not a part of the plat document. It's a separate survey that we request when there are existing buildings that will remain so that we can understand how they relate to those new interior lot lines. And this exhibit does a good job of showing, in part, sort of why we are supportive as a staff of the variance requests. The existing farmhouse footprint is shaded in yellow, and you can see these dashed lines that parallel the blue lines. Unlike in the previous slide, those are showing those minimum setback requirements. So the existing home far exceeds that minimum front setback, which is 25 feet. We don't do setback variances for an existing condition. It's at about 18 feet right now. But the reason that we require 80 feet for new lots is because the developable area becomes pretty small when you have those big setbacks on 2 street frontages. In this case, it's not really an issue because the home is existing. So if we were going to have this home scrape potentially and need to redevelop it, we'd be a little bit more concerned. But in this case, as you can see, the developable area of Lot 2 is still substantial because the lot is so oversized. This slide is also showing a few of the lots to the east, the neighboring properties. You can see that the variances don't interfere with provision of a logical lot layout. These lots are pretty much the same size as the adjacent properties to the east, and as you can see, they're certainly oversized. They're much deeper than the neighboring lots. These are a couple images of the property that should help to put that information into context. So this one is a view taken from 32nd Avenue. It's a view of the existing farmhouse, and you can see the vacant area on the right-hand side of the image that would become the new Lot 3. There is existing curb, gutter, and sidewalk on 32nd Avenue, so that will remain in place. Just another view, again, from 32nd Avenue. You can see the neighboring property in the far background to the right. And the last image I have for you today is from the other end of the subdivision. So this is from 32nd Place and Teller looking south. And this vacant area is what will be Lot 1. It'll be that oversized lot that could be a single family or duplex being used as a garden. You can see that dirt patch. You can also see that there's not curb, gutter, or sidewalk in this particular area on 32nd Place or Teller. The applicant will be responsible for installing curb and gutter at a minimum on these frontages where it doesn't exist. They're also responsible for either installing a 5-foot attached sidewalk, which is our standard requirement for a local street, or paying a fee in lieu. With a residential subdivision, we do give that option to the applicant. As part of the review process, this application was sent on referral to all outside agencies and city departments, utility districts. All districts have indicated that they can serve those new lots if they were to be developed. The Public Works Department has reviewed and approved the plat and the supporting documents, and as I've mentioned, they've established those requirements for curb, gutter, and sidewalk. The Parks Department initiates or requires a parkland dedication fee. Any new residential lot or building in the city presumably creates more demand on our parkland, so it is the one impact fee that we have. Each new lot will be required to pay about $2,500 since there's clearly not space for a public park as part of the subdivision. Those fees will be owed at the time the plat is recorded. The utility district, sanitation, and water can serve the property. There's enough capacity in their infrastructure, and Excel also had no concerns with serving the property. Subdivision applications do not require a neighborhood meeting, but we have had the property posted for 2 weeks and sent letters. I've had 2 inquiries from neighbors just wondering what the proposal was, but no additional comments. There are going to be 2 separate motions for tonight's case. The first motion will need to be for the variance request, and the second motion will be related to the subdivision plat. Ultimately, staff is recommending approval of both requests. As the commission is aware, there are several criteria that we use to evaluate a variance request, and that full analysis was included in the staff report, but I'll go through some of those conclusions here briefly. The request does meet a majority of the variance criteria, and it's part of your duty as hearing the variance request to consider those criteria in terms of your recommendation. We find that the variance for lot widths does not alter the character of the neighborhood. The 2-foot variance will be imperceptible in our minds, and the corner lot is already developed and would not be impacted by that lot width requirement. The applicant is proposing a substantial investment in the property. It's an investment that is consistent with the city's neighborhood revitalization strategy. It's a policy document that supports property investment and calls for new high-quality housing stock. Approval of the variances would result in a logical lot layout and also allows preservation of the farmhouse that's existing. And finally, staff finds that the variances would not have a detrimental effect on the public safety, health, or welfare. For those reasons, I'd recommend approval of the variance request. In regards to the subdivision plat, all agencies can serve the property, and the plat meets all of the technical requirements of the subdivision regulations. So I am recommending approval with 3 conditions: that curb and gutter be installed on Teller Street and 32nd Place, and that fees in lieu of sidewalk be paid before recording if they're going to be paid instead of installed, and that fees in lieu of parkland dedication also be paid in lieu or before the plat's recorded. That is the end of my presentation. I know the applicant and his family is in the audience, but I'd be happy to take any questions you might have.
Great, thanks for the presentation. For questions, I'll start over here with Commissioner Ohm. Do you have any questions?
None at this time, thank you.
Commissioner Olson, do you have any questions?
None at this time, thank you.
Commissioner Dorsey,
I have no.
Commissioner Weaver, Commissioner Bowden? No questions. Okay, thank you. Now, let's see, if we have the applicant here, if you would like to come up and say anything to the commission regarding this case, you're more than welcome to, but you're certainly not required to. As you saw, we have the contents of the packet, which you guys saw. But we'd love to take any other comments you guys might have if you'd like to say anything. If you want to come on up, you can just come up to the microphone and please state your name and address for our minute records and give your comments.
I am Philip Mann. I'm David Mann's father, and we bought the property together, so I have quite a substantial investment in the property. We're really excited. My wife and I are planning to make this a family compound so that my son and his wife and our granddaughter can live next door in a new home, and we're going to take the old farmhouse. It needs some renovation, and we're excited to get moved in so we can get that started. Just appreciate all your efforts, and sorry, I usually don't need a mic. Appreciate all your efforts and considering our request, and we sure are looking forward to making this happen for our family.
Okay, great. If you can stick around for 1 second in case the commissioners have any questions. I'll start over here. Commissioner Bowden, do you have any questions for the applicant? Commissioner Weaver, Commissioner Dorsey, Commissioner Olson? Okay, no questions. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. So now we come to the point in the case where if anyone from the public wants to speak, they will have that opportunity. I have a number of people who signed in here on this case, and it does record whether you're in favor or opposed to the case proposed motions. So don't feel like you have to come up and say something in addition to that if you don't want to, because we certainly have your information here. But what I will do is go through these names, and if you'd like to come up and speak, please feel free to do so. We'd love to hear what you have to say and take that into consideration. I would ask, because we have a number of people here who might want to speak, that you keep your comments to 3 minutes if possible. So the first person on the list here is Dorothy Archer. Ms. Archer, if you can come up and give your name and address for our minutes, we'd appreciate it. And also just for anyone coming up to comment, please address your comments to us, the commission. If you have questions or concerns, address them to us, and then we will address those at the conclusion of the comment period to staff or the applicant. Okay, thank you.
My name is Dorothy Archer. I live at 3640 Marshall Street, but I have rental property on 7100 West 33rd Avenue, so I have received notification of the change on this property taking place. I'm not in favor of the amount of properties that you want to put on this lot. If any of you were here when we did some research many years ago on all of the properties in Wheat Ridge addressing zoning issues. True, this is a zone for 1 and 2, single family and duplexes. I don't understand your variance. If you have recognized in Wheat Ridge, many of the properties have a 4th to a 3rd an acre to them. Is this just the beginning? My duplex could be torn down and 3 duplexes could be put in its place. I'm very concerned about where it goes from here. Maybe 2 homes. I don't care what it's zoned for. It's jam it and cram it. Is this where we're headed? I take a look at 38th and Depew. Yes, we do need condominiums for people. There's absolutely no on-street parking for those people. Each one has a single car garage, and that's it. The battle takes place for 38th Avenue. If we go back to 4 lanes, there's no more on-street parking. I take a look at what's happening to North Denver. to the Highlands. The whole concept of that area is changing face. It has nothing to do with the history of the area. I don't know if you're a contractor for the houses that are being built there. Are you, Mr. Mann?
Could you please address your comments to the commission? We'd be happy to ask
Okay,
him. Thank you.
because I don't want to say things that are offensive because I don't know the answers.
Okay.
I'm not for the contemporary. That's not what we're about. We have to remember why people move to Wheat Ridge. Ask anybody, why do they move here? It has a small town effect. It's slow. It's easygoing. It's the hub to everything. You can cross Sheridan coming from any direction and walk into Wheat Ridge and go, whew. Let's leave it that way. Be careful of how far you're going with this.
Thank you for your comments. Next up on my sheet here is Catherine Dunlap. If you could give your name and address and your comments, we'd appreciate it.
Hi, I'm Catherine Dunlap. I live at 7160 West 30th Avenue, Wheat Ridge, Colorado. We bought our home 24 years ago, and we loved this property. When it went up for sale, we were hoping that a family would buy it and preserve the beautiful yard where the kids had some room to run around. Now, as I look at the plan, I'm even more alarmed because you're going to divide the property into 3 lots and then rezone each of the lots. And I don't understand that. This was zoned as an R2 property. In the comprehensive plan, we stuck at one time to what our lot width considerations were for properties. Now it seems like we're turning into Denver, and anything is going to go as long as it gets through the planners. I don't know. I'm very distressed by it. We knew the former owners, and I was just so disappointed. I feel sorry for the person that wants to put his family here, but there isn't enough room for all that they want to do without variance. Now, if there was enough room to do what they wanted to do, they could do it. But we have these lot size requirements in place for a reason. There's not going to be a backyard to the old farmhouse. If they put a house behind it, there's not going to be any backyard for the duplexes or the house. And I don't understand how you can take an R2 property, divide it into lots, and then rezone each of them an R2 so you get 6 instead of 1 or 2. That's just beyond me. I just didn't even stick to my script because this is not the type of thing that I was used to with the old planning commission. I thought we had a comprehensive plan in Wheat Ridge, and we're not, if we uphold these variances, we're not going to be upholding the comprehensive plan. We're not going to support the character of our neighborhood, and we're not even enhancing the neighborhood. We're enhancing a family. And I think that we need to look at the neighborhood, and I am strongly opposed to the development of this property in a 3-unit modem or subdivision, and I urge you to maintain required lot size requirements and to deny the requested variances on the property. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Just because I want to make sure we're clear on this, Lauren, it's my understanding from your presentation that subdividing either the subdivision and the variance proposals here tonight do not impact the zoning itself. Is that
That's
is that
correct.
correct?
There's no change in the zoning. Any property in the city that is oversized, or in this case, 4 times the size that needs to happen, is permitted because they have a zoning right to create smaller parcels of land to utilize the existing zoning, and that's exactly what's being done. No change to the zoning.
No change to the zone. I just wanted to make sure we understood that. Okay, thank you. The next person on our list is Larry Matthews.
Good evening. Larry Matthews, 3851 Hoyt Street. In general, I wish them well. I also am of the opinion have been fighting high-density housing in the city, especially in the last 6 months. I would be more in favor of this if A, there were no variances. I'm concerned about a couple of things. Number one is the 80-foot frontage on 32nd, which is the main thoroughfare, which everyone is going to go through and see. And so I'm not happy with that configuration because it's going to start looking almost like row houses. So I'm against this because I want to see no variances. I want to see all of our setbacks and lot sizes maintained. And as a compromise, most lots in this city are around a third or quarter acre. That seems to be our standard. And I would certainly not deny that to them to have a third acre lot. But I would object to this because they are increasing the density of our population and also opening us up to potentially more rental, especially the duplex. And our city mission is to cut down on rental properties to make a condition of this subdivision going to 3 R1 properties. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next on our list is Philip Mann.
That's the
But
applicant.
you've already spoken. Never mind. Sorry. That's what happens when I have a list. I just Nyla Mann. Did you want to comment? You don't have to. Okay. If you just come up and give your name and address, please, and your comments.
For us, this really means a lot to our family. We lost
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, ma'am. Could we get your name? Just for the minutes, could we get your name and address? Thanks.
I'm Nyla Mann, and we wanted to bring our family together. And after losing our oldest boy in a traffic accident, and now we have a granddaughter, we want to see our granddaughter grow up. We want to share in watching her grow up. So this is more than just building a house or restoring an old house. This is about pulling our family together, being apart. When a time when families are spread out all over the United States and children don't know their grandparents, they Skype them, that's how they know grandma. I don't want that for my daughter, and that's why we bought this property. We saw it as an opportunity to bring our family together. So, I mean, for us, it's a very personal, filled with a lot of love, and we want this to happen for our family.
Thank you for your comments. Tyler Devine, would you like to speak? Okay. Brent Metz. Hi, just name, address, and whatever you have to say. Thank you.
Brent Metz, 3100 Fenton Street is our rental in the neighborhood, and we live at 3802 Union Court. I guess I would like to speak on behalf of the applicant. I've actually been on the property, and I think it's very difficult for some people to look at an engineering drawing and really get a feel for how it's actually going to look. From walking the front yard will be preserved. It's still going to be very generous by certainly my standards growing up as far as space. The preserving of the old house, I love the old houses in the area. I think it's excellent that they've decided to do everything in their power to keep that structure intact, to kind of keep a little history with the area. As far as the individual lot size, I think the size is there. It may not be exactly squared up with all the other lots, but it's just a little bit deeper. Maybe not quite as wide as some of the other lots, but it has significant depth. So there will be a backyard from what I've seen, a significant backyard at that too. Beyond that, I mean, I wish them the best of luck. I know their family personally, and I can attest to their character and their commitment to their community. So that's all I have.
Great. Thank you for your comments. Lori Middleton. Did you want to speak? No? Okay. Let's see. I also have David Mann. Would you like to come speak?
My name is David Mann, and I currently live at 3540 Plymouth Street in Denver. The only reason that we went for the variances in the first place was, and Lauren can correct me on this, but if we tore down the old house, we could have made this work with nothing. We just would have been an administrative sign off on the lot subdivision. So we went this route to keep the old house preserved. So I just want to make that point. If it doesn't work out, it'd be a shame, but to make it work, you might have to take down the old house, which would be terrible.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Moira Nolan.
Hi, I'm Maura Nolan, and I live at 7145 West 32nd Place. I'm directly to the north of the property, one lot to the east. So I appreciate family. I'm from a very large family myself. I think that the fact that you guys want to do this as a family, I think is awesome. I think that our neighborhood is incredible, and I'm all about building community in our neighborhood. I'm here with a neighbor tonight. We have kids that play together, and my biggest concern, I think, with the development is, why 3 lots? Why can't we just do 2 lots? Again, the variance is concerning, especially as it is a slippery slope. I appreciate that you kept the old house. I think that, I've lived in this neighborhood long enough to just love that house. So I recommend you, commend you for doing that. I think it's great. I'm very concerned about the 3rd lot because that would be a duplex or a house that would be facing mine. Where's the driveway going to be? That could be a duplex that means 4 more cars on that street. Like I said, we have kids, and it's already a really scary hill on Teller, and cars fly down that street. And the fact that that corner doesn't have, it's a blind corner, and so now I'm seeing that there, is a requirement to have the sidewalks and the gutters, but they could just pay a fee in lieu of that. That's very scary to me. So that's, we'll just, sell that property and then just pay an extra, I don't know, $2,500 and not even have to worry about it. That's, to me, extremely concerning. So at this point, I'm opposed to it. I don't want you guys to take it personally because I really do appreciate what you're doing for the neighborhood, but I would like to see it just 2 lots. And again, especially with, if that 3rd lot turns into a rental, we already have rentals on 32nd Place. They're rat holes. I mean, the tenants are not owning that property, so they don't care about that property. The landlords are absentee landlords. We drove by one today, and it's just, it's horrible for our neighborhood. And so it just concerns me that that would be a tenant space that people don't care about our neighborhood and our community. So at this point, I'm opposed to it.
Thank you for your comments. Next on my list is Elliot Cohn. Hi there.
My name is Harless Elliott Cohn. I live at 7075 West 32nd Place. I also am a close resident to this property. It sounds like the American dream to me for these people to get the opportunity to do that. And I applaud you guys for pursuing the dream. I was aware of the zoning of this property when I bought my house 7 years ago. And my wife and I discussed that since it didn't meet its variances, we would never have to have this meeting. I would encourage you guys to stick with this. We have these variances in place for a reason. If you guys want to scrape that property, don't threaten me with it. You're changing it so dramatically already that it's gone. I urge you guys to not approve this. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. JT Nolan, would you like to? Oh, okay. Okay. Okay, thank you. And the last person on my list is Thomas Slattery. If you can give your name and address and your comments, thank you.
Thomas Slattery, 6869 West 32nd Avenue. I am on 32nd Avenue on the same side of the street. I'm on the opposite end of that super block that runs from Pierce to Teller. I have several comments. I resent the implication that this does not alter the neighborhood. This neighborhood has always conformed to R2 zoning, and I want it to stay that way. Now, I don't have a problem with 73 feet on the one lot. I can see a 2-foot variance there. But what I heard was 68 and a half feet on lot 3, is that correct?
I believe it's correct, so we'll check that.
That I object to very, very strongly. The R2 lot at the other end, I don't feel I can fight if it conforms to zoning, but I would sympathize with these people that don't want it in their neighborhood because there are not any duplexes on that street at that end. There are down on my end, but as I say, I don't feel I can actually fight that one. One question I have is, who is going to approve this? The Board of Adjustment, or is this something the staff is granting? Now, I know we got a watered-down zoning code that allows staff a lot of discretion in granting variances, but I don't think this should go to the City Council on staff recommendation. I think it needs to go to the Board of Adjustment. So who does it go to?
We'll take that up in our discussion and find out for you.
Okay. The third question I have is the right-of-way dedication. Is this 5 feet you're asking them to dedicate?
I believe it's 5 feet.
8.
It's 8, thank you, 8 feet.
The north side of 32nd Avenue is not in non-compliance with right-of-way requirements. The non-compliance is on the south side. Why are we on the north side being expected to correct this right-of-way situation? I have a letter from a prior city attorney granting that there is 30 feet of right-of-way in front of my property. Now, I know the city has required subsequent surveys to show only 25 feet, and there's even a phony plat that's still on file. I really object to this right-of-way dedication. It's phony. And I guess that's about it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Would anyone else like to speak who isn't on the list? You're more than welcome to. Yes, you can. Yes, please do. Come on up and just give your name and address and your comments, please.
Lori Middleton, and I'm the wife of the applicant. I would just like to tell everybody here that don't let the duplex lot scare you. It's currently a garden. It's going to remain a garden as long as we own the property, most likely. And the other thing is that if in the event that there was some sort of duplex built there, it's most certainly not going to be a rental. It's going to be two sides, very classy, and each side would probably sell for like $500,000. So to my knowledge, it would not be rat hole renters in those, just to make you feel better. But in its current use, it is going to remain a garden. We've already dumped like $1,500 into it, so it's not going anywhere anytime soon. So the idea is just that my family lives next to other family in Wheat Ridge on this beautiful, majestic lot. And that's basically it. The way you cut it up on the piece of paper, you can think about it however you like, but we love the old house. We want to build a very classy, modern barn house, farmhouse right next to it and live out our days there. I do not want to sell it ever in my lifetime. It's the most awesome thing we could have ever come across. So that's it. That's all I want to say.
Great. Thank you for your comments. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak? Okay, with that, I'll close the public portion of the hearing. And we will take up questions for staff or the applicant based on what we've heard. And I've got a list of issues that came up with the citizen comments and questions. But let's start with Commissioner Ohm.
The one question I had for staff was, what is the maximum building footprint? Like if I want to max out the R2 for one single lot, what could I do? Or
Sure, maximum lot coverage in the R2 zone district is 40% of the lot area can be covered with a building footprint. It's a house, garage, shed, anything that's vertical counts towards that. Most properties in the city don't come close to that coverage.
Okay. Thank you.
Mhm.
Commissioner Olson, do you have any questions?
No questions.
Commissioner Dorsey, do you have questions for staff or the applicant?
I don't have.
Okay. Commissioner Weaver? Commissioner Bolton? Okay. A couple of questions that came up that I just want to clarify with staff. In terms of the variance question, can you speak to why the Planning Commission is hearing this variance as opposed to the Board of Adjustment?
Sure. Yeah, I wanna make a couple comments on variances just so that we're all clear. Anytime that a variance comes in as a standalone variance, there's nothing else being requested other than a building permit, it would go to the Board of Adjustment. But the code requires that if it comes in with another land use application, with the subdivision, with the zone change, with the plan development, with the site plan, they have to be heard together. They don't make sense if you're not listening to both cases. Board of Adjustment does not have the authority to hear any other type of land use case. So because you're hearing the subdivision, you also will hear the variance request. It has to go to City Council, so you will make a recommendation. You're not approving anything tonight. City Council will be the one who ultimately decides upon both the variance and the plat because they are related to each other. A couple other things just to note about variances, you don't hear them very often. So I just want to clarify sort of what the context is of a variance request. Zoning code is written more or less in a vacuum. We try to envision what does the perfect community look like if it was all rectangular lots that knew what those setbacks were going to be and what the lot sizes were going to be. This is a property that was created in the 1800s. As I mentioned, it's 4 times larger than the zone district requires. Average lot sizes in this area, we queried basically 2 parcels around in every direction. Average lot size is 10,600 square feet. So the current property in its condition of almost an acre, again, about 4 times bigger, and each of these 3 lots would still be larger than that average in the area. We've heard a lot about that there isn't enough room for 3 lots, and we look at a couple different things when we're creating new lots. We look at lot size, which again, these are all definitely meeting lot width and developable area in terms of shape. So we need to make sure that we're creating a lot that makes sense for the pattern in the neighborhood. You've seen that it's relatively consistent with the pattern in the neighborhood and can be developed or can accommodate the existing development. And it does meet those thresholds. We recognize that one of the lots is going to be about 2 feet narrower than its neighbors. The other lot at 68.5 feet will be 6.5 feet narrower than its neighbors, which are all at that 75. So it is a variance, so, it does have a higher level of scrutiny, but I know somebody had commented, if the farmhouse were to be scraped, and this isn't a threat, we're just looking at sizes, you could accommodate definitely 3, potentially 4, although that might be tight, on this lot area. It's it's an oversized lot, it spans the full block. So those are the types of things that we're looking at when we look at variances.
So conceivably, as you were saying, if that farmhouse wasn't there, you could have You could take lot 2 and divide that again.
Well, you'd put 3 lots probably oriented the same way as lot 1, just stacked on top of each other. So one oriented to 32nd Place, 32nd Avenue, and one in the middle oriented to Teller. Yeah,
see.
easily. Hmm.
Yeah, the total square footage is there, is what you're saying.
Correct, yep.
Okay. All right. I think that addresses most of the questions. I just wanted to look over this one more time. Just generally, can you speak to why there is why we have that differential in the variance requests? You know, the 68.5 versus the 73, and why isn't it more even? Was there a logistical reason for that?
Sure. I think the applicant, they could have drawn that line almost anywhere. The minimum setback for a property in R2 is 5 feet. And so we went from the existing farmhouse and said, where does 5 feet land? And as you get into the neighborhood, we were trying to be sensitive to becoming more of a standardized lot as you move towards your adjacent neighbors. And so the lot 3 that is next to a neighbor is almost at 75 feet. It's at 73. And we figured that it made more sense for the corner lot to absorb some of that differential because there isn't a neighbor on that other side, and it meets the setbacks. So it seemed appropriate. To your point, we could have, that line could have been drawn anywhere. It could have been the same amount of variance on either lot, but this sort of made the most sense it appeared for that situation.
Okay. And again, just to reiterate, the zoning is not changing at all. It was R2 and it's going to remain R2.
That's correct. Yeah, I know we've had some reference to some other residential projects in the city. Those are different zone districts on different corridors. The density of development that is proposed is still probably less than what's existing in the neighborhood right now.
Okay. Any additional questions from us? Anybody? Okay. So now it's the time to entertain a motion, and then if that motion is seconded, we can have some discussion and then a vote.
And we'll do that twice, just for
Yes, we're doing that twice. Let me just clarify what we are doing. We have 2 motions. We have a variance and a subdivision. The motion on the variance has to occur prior to the motion on the subdivision. And then we were requiring a supermajority vote of the members present in order to recommend approval of the variance. So that's just...
That will require 5 positive votes to approve the variance.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I can't make a motion.
Okay.
Chair.
I'm going to go ahead and do it.
All right.
I move to recommend the approval of an 11.5-foot variance from the lot width requirement for Lot 2 and a 2-foot variance from the lot width requirement for Lot 3 to allow single-family lots zoned residential 2, R2, for the following reasons. Number 1, the application is in compliance with the majority of the review criteria. Number 2, the variance would not alter the essential character of the locality. Number 3, the applicant is proposing a substantial investment in the property, which may not be possible without the variance. Number 4, the proposed investment is consistent with the neighborhood revitalization strategy and other documents supported by the city that encourage property improvements and provision of new housing stock. The proposed lot layout is logical and enables preservation of the existing farmhouse. Number 6, the request would not be detrimental to public safety or welfare.
Second.
Okay. Do we have any further discussion before we vote? Okay.
Yes.
Oh, you do? Okay.
I'm planning to support this simply because I really would like to see the farmhouse preserved, and I think the lot does support the 3-lot subdivision, as far as what we talked about with the keeping in with the rest of the neighborhood.
I would also like to see the farmhouse stay, and that's why I would go with the 11.5-foot variance as well. And my understanding is that it is a farmhouse. At some point, there was a farm with no homes around there, and these are what we have before us, the code, and this complies. So, I'm voting yes.
Any other discussion? Okay, I'll call for a vote, please.
And the motion is approved, 6-1. Commissioner Olson voting no. I'm sorry, that's 5.
You abstaining from this vote?
Abstaining.
Okay. Can you state the reasons why you're abstaining, please?
Well, I think the main reason is this is my first meeting, and I'm a little slow to pull the trigger. I have to say that I was a little surprised by the neighbors in close vicinity and to the objections, and I just wanted more time to process that and to consider those thoughts.
Okay, the next item up in this case is the subdivision plat. Do we have a motion on that?
I make a motion for the subdivision. I move to recommend approval of case number WS-15-01, a request for approval of a 3-lot subdivision plat on property zoned residential to R2 and located at 7193 Teller Street for the following reasons. All agencies can provide services to the property with improvements installed at the developer's expense. Number 2, the requirements of Article 4 of the Zoning and Development Code have been met with the following conditions. 1, curb and gutter improvements shall be constructed along Teller Street and West 32nd Place. Number 2, fees in lieu of sidewalk construction be provided at the time of recordation of the sidewalk, if not otherwise to be constructed by the applicant. Number 3, fees in lieu of parkland dedication to be provided at the time of recordation.
Second.
Does anyone have any discussion? I just have one clarification. I wanted to clarify one part that was, one question that was missed, comment from one of the neighbors. Brought up fee in lieu. There's no fee in lieu of the curb and gutter, correct? It's just fee in lieu of the sidewalks as an option, correct?
That is correct, yeah. Curb and gutter in this case is required to be installed because it's the only portion in this neighborhood that doesn't have it in this block. There are other adjacent properties without curb and gutter, and it will just help with drainage. Anywhere in the city for single and 2 families, if somebody were to come in and add an addition to their home of a certain size or to scrape and redevelop their home, they are subject to the requirement to either install or pay for curb, gutter, and sidewalk. So in this case, we're not giving the option for curb and gutter because of drainage reasons, but we do give the option to anyone in the city, single and 2 family homes, to either pay or install their portion of sidewalk.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that. I regret not bringing up that question earlier, but thank you. Any other discussion? Okay, then I'll call for a vote.
I just feel it's too closely tied to the other one, to vote on one and not the other.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so that takes care of that case. I'd like to thank the applicants, the city, and all the neighbors who came out to give comments. We appreciate all of it. We're going to move on to the next case. Next case is number ZOA-15-02, an ordinance amending Articles 2 and 6 of Chapter 26 of the Code of Laws concerning residential side and rear yard setbacks. Hey, we were just talking about setbacks, weren't we? Okay, great. Lauren.
Again, for the record, Lauren Mikulak with the Community Development Department, here to present case number ZOA 1501. I would like to enter into the record the case file, the zoning code, the draft ordinance, and this digital presentation. Public noticing requirements for this hearing have been met.
Great, so entered, thank you.
Ms. Mikulak, did you say 01 or 02?
Thank you. 02. Case number 1502.
Yes.
Our second code amendment for the year. This is a slightly different case. Your previous case was quasi-judicial, so we were looking specifically at one property in the city. As a proposed amendment of the Wheat Ridge zoning code, this is a code amendment that is legislative action. It would affect all applicable properties in the city. Some code amendments you see at a study session. You haven't seen this at a study session before. Some of the minor ones we just bring straight to public hearing. So I want to give you a little bit of background about how this topic came up. It wasn't on our original list of code amendments to tackle in 2015, but in March of this year, a few residents in East Wheat Ridge approached council with some concerns that their lots are really small and they were platted a long time ago before the zoning code existed, and they're concerned that they are not able to really fully redevelop them under our current zoning standards. And so council directed staff to look at that issue of whether or not the zoning code was prohibiting investment in East Wheat Ridge. We see a lot of scrapes and different pace of development in Denver, as was mentioned previously, just across Sheridan. And so we looked at the zoning code and did a pretty full analysis of, what is maybe encouraging or promoting or allowing versus what is preventing some investment in that side of town. And there's really only one very narrow provision that may be perceived as a burden in certain cases on certain substandard lots that are corner lots. It's a very small segment of the properties in the city, but it relates to that side setback for those street-facing side yards. So there's two amendments that I want to walk you through. One relates specifically to what that corner lot setback is, and the other relates to a setback reduction that already exists in the code based on average setbacks in the area. So again, a little bit more context in terms of the area where this issue was raised and the area that we analyzed. The city, as you probably know, was incorporated in 1969, and much of the city was already platted and developed before we even became a city. So we're overlaying zoning standards on existing development, and that can often mean that we have a lot of nonconformities, things that maybe were allowed when they were built, but would no longer be allowed to be built under the current code. What you're looking at is a zoning map that's got the red lines are the right-of-ways, just to give you sort of a street grid orientation, and all those black dots are all the buildings that exist in the city. So you can see that we tend to be much more dense in this eastern portion of the city. This is Sheridan over here. Let me orient you a little bit. Sheridan, Wadsworth on the far left side, 32nd, 26th, 32nd, 35th, 38th is that mixed use color. So this lighter color of yellow, could we get the lights? Can you see that? Could we get the lights turned on the projector? Thank you, perfect. So the lighter color that is over here in this East Wheat Ridge is our smallest lot, single-family zone district. That light color is R1C. Those lots are actually only 5,000 square feet in size, and you can tell by the density of those black dots that it's a more dense area because of those smaller lot sizes. The majority of Wheat Ridge is zoned in this yellow-green color. That's R2, and you can see again by comparison, it's a relatively low-density zone district. So we looked really hard at this area. Those three areas that are outlined in bright blue are three of the oldest subdivisions in the city. Those properties were platted in 1889, 1890, and 1919. So almost over 100 years ago. Between those three subdivisions, we've got 475 properties, and the average year that those homes were built is 1935. So we've got small lots, mostly single family, older homes, and a lot of them are legally non-conforming in terms of meeting today's setback standards. They couldn't have predicted what we'd be requiring, 80 years ago. Let's see. In terms of if you wanted to invest in your existing home, we have provisions in the code that address that situation. So if you have a non-conforming setback and you want to do an addition, you're allowed to build in line with your existing building footprint. So if you have a 3-foot setback, your addition can have a 3-foot setback. If you have a 15-foot front yard, if you added your porch in line, your garage in line could have a 15-foot front yard. So the issue is when you come in and you say, my home was built in 1935, I'd like to scrape and rebuild it, automatically you have to meet the new standards. You can't inherit those older setbacks. So what we did is we looked at how that affects, in particular, lots that are on the corner. And so what this image is showing is our current zoning standards as they relate specifically to corner lots. The black lines indicate sort of a typical lot layout. These are, this was taken from the plat, so proportionally these are the ratios of those lots in East Wheat Ridge. The average lot is about 50 feet wide by 100 to 120 feet deep. And the front setbacks in the city range from 20 to 30 feet. In this East Wheat Ridge area, they're 20 feet. So your front setback is 20, indicated by this darker gray area. Your side and rear setbacks are 5. But if you're on a corner lot, you have to have that 20 feet on both sides. And so the white box is that buildable area, and you can see what those current standards do to these older lots. They reduce that developable area almost by half. So what we've heard from a few residents in that area is that, you know, I don't want to go through the variance process necessarily. I don't necessarily want to go to the Board of Adjustment because this isn't a problem that is unique to one lot. It's a pattern that we see in the city. And so a variance isn't, a code amendment is more appropriate when we see a pattern, a widespread pattern, something like this. So what the code amendment is proposing essentially is this modified scenario that you're seeing on the right-hand side that would allow very specifically for corner lots that are less than 60 feet, so targeting that substandard lot size, to reduce that street-facing side setback by half. So again, our front setbacks range from 20 to 30 feet, so the reduced setback would range from 10 to 15 feet. It's a change that would be instituted for all residential zone districts, but we think that it would really only affect this area of town in East Wheat Ridge because we don't have very many lots elsewhere that are substandard in size. We've got plenty of size and width in those other zone districts in the rest of the city. The other portion of this code amendment, there's sort of two provisions that we're changing as a catch-all to address these corner lots. There's a provision existing in the code right now that's illustrated by this diagram that says if you live in a neighborhood and the average setback, front setback in your neighborhood is less than what the code requires, you can have that average setback. So in this example, the front yard setback requirement is shown by this dark gray color, but the average setbacks you can see from these homes that are closer to the street is indicated by this dashed line. So if someone were to come and redevelop the vacant lot, instead of meeting the code setback, they could meet the average setback. That provision doesn't apply right now to anything other than your front yard, and so the code amendment would suggest that a street-facing side or rear yard could also benefit from that averaging. So it would essentially be these longer edges. You know, if the average along these neighboring blocks is less than whatever the code requires, then you can meet that average. With those two changes, whatever is less would be the one that prevails. I really doubt that we'll ever see the average invoked because we don't have that many that are that many existing homes that are really less than 10 feet. So I think that what we'll see in East Wheat Ridge, if, you know, of those few corner lots that want to redevelop under this new code, they may have a 10-foot setback. In terms of character of the neighborhood, as I mentioned, a lot of these homes are existing, so that is, this reduced setback standard is not reduced compared to what's out there today. It's really pretty consistent with the character of the neighborhood. We feel that 10 feet preserves still a functional side yard. You can mow it, you can occupy it. You're not in this sliver of 3 to 5 feet. And it's still a safe distance from the street, from a sight distance perspective, from a pedestrian experience, from a vehicle experience. It's an appropriate setback requirement. So those are just the two quick explanations of those code amendments. As I mentioned, they would apply to all residential zone districts. I know I've talked about East Wheat Ridge, and it's really because that's the case study where we tend to have those really small substandard lot sizes. And we really think it's unlikely to impact properties elsewhere in the city where sizes and widths tend to be larger. So staff is recommending approval. All zone changes or code changes need to be approved by council, and that hearing is scheduled for June 22nd.
Great. Okay. Do we have questions for Lauren? Scott?
I do. I got a couple. One is, what is the standard length to determine average? And I can, like say like on the front, would it be that block? Would that be the average?
Oh, that's a great question.
And then the next one would be like, what would it be like on the side? Because if you just have a house and there's a house behind you, do you have to go? Is there a set distance, or is it like 3 blocks, or?
So what is the area against which you're calculating that average is the question. So right now, the way that it's written in the code for the front yard, and that's what we sort of had to start working with, is anything in the same block on the same side within 200 feet.
Okay.
And so what we did is because, within 200 feet, you're going to capture at least a few lots to generate your average. These longer edges tend to be 100 to 125 feet. So we have suggested that it be any property on the same side of the street within 300 feet. So you'd essentially capture the lot next to you, like in this case, sorry, the mouse, this lot, and then probably the lot across the street on either side. We didn't want to go too far because the intent of this average is really to say, what are you seeing when you're seeing this house? Like, what is right here in the foreground? So it would capture, within 300 feet, would capture about 3 to 4 lots.
Okay. And then for the like corner lots, what was like the original, I guess, setback or distance on some of these properties? Is it just all over the place, or is there something that was kind of a standard? If it was.
What are the existing conditions out there right now?
Yeah. What is it? 10 feet all over the place? Okay.
We didn't do. What we could have done. We don't have surveys, and our mapping system doesn't constitute a survey. So we could have gone in and roughly measured, every corner in East Wheat Ridge. But there's not enough of a pattern to say we should really, we should measure every lot because there's probably a good average in there. They're kind of all over.
Okay. And so the minimum that you're coming up with, I guess and there's two. There's one is the averages, right? That takes into account site visibility, site distance. Okay.
Yep. Yeah. So the last revision for that average is, regardless of what your average is, in no case can you create a site distance triangle obstruction.
Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Olson, questions?
No questions.
Okay. All right.
My understanding then is we're looking at the area in East Wheat Ridge, but the rules that we put down are going to be for the whole city?
That's correct. Yep. So
why wouldn't they just make the rules for this particular area that's a problem? I mean, why do we need
Sure.
to?
So the reason for that, so that zone, there are, as you can kind of tell from this, there's probably 6 different zone districts in this area. And those zone districts are also elsewhere in the city. So the city doesn't utilize geographic zoning. We don't have overlays that say, oh, and these special rules only apply to this geographic area. So we only have our zone districts to apply them to. There are very, very few lots in the city, because they were platted more recently than the 1800s, where the lots are less than 60 feet in width. And so that's one thing that we did look at is, what are our average lots around the city, and where do we draw that line to say this exception applies to this category? So we think that by saying this only applies to corner lots that are 60 feet or less in width will apply 99.5% of the time to East Wheat Ridge, because we know what that subdivision pattern was. There's just not really another good mechanism, because the zone districts cover the whole city. Does that help clarify?
That sort of clarifies it.
So my understanding is, like the quick case we just heard, that would not fall into this because it's over 60 feet.
Right.
Okay.
They're at 63 and a half feet.
Right.
Yeah. So in their case, and anyone in the city could do this now or anytime, their recourse, if they did scrape the farmhouse and needed a setback variance, would be to go for, and wanted to have a reduced setback, would be to go for a variance. And that's it's an option that some of the people that brought this up as a code amendment proposal, we've said to them, you can do a variance. The problem with variances is that they require significant investment up front. So if you're going to tear down a house and propose a new house, you need to give us your architectural drawings for the new house before you apply. So you're automatically hiring an architect, doing floor plan, and you're doing elevations, because we consider, as you heard earlier, what the facade might look like if the setback's going to be shorter and how that's perceived. So all variances are case by case, and in different cases we look for different things. And as I mentioned earlier, because this is more of a pattern, it's more appropriate to do a code amendment in that area of town. You know, if they were to scrape the farmhouse, it'd be a unique situation for that neighborhood, and so the variance would be appropriate there because it's unique to that area of town.
You have any questions? All right. So Lauren, how does this proposed rule compare to the surrounding municipalities, especially Denver? Because I know, you know, I live over in East Wheat Ridge. I'm familiar with the areas you're talking about, and you know, just across Sheridan, the housing pattern's almost identical. Right. You know, the housing style, the age of the construction and stuff. So, what's the setback? You know, what are the conditions like to the east, especially?
We didn't do a code analysis of Denver. Denver's zoning code, if you've looked at that before, they have like 3 levels of zoning, so it's just more challenging to interpret. It's not as straightforward as ours, if you can believe it. Ours is actually really simple compared to Denver's. I know, having lived in Denver too, I know that their minimum setbacks are as low as 3 feet in some neighborhoods, and you know, Highlands area is among the most dense neighborhoods. I don't know if they carve out an exception for street-facing side yards, which is what we're addressing. But you know, anecdotally and just by observing, driving 29th Avenue, it seems like it's relatively consistent.
Yeah, that was my impression as well. I was just curious about that. Okay, that's all the questions I have. Yes, Scott.
I got one more. I'm trying to think of possible scenarios. So let's say I own 2 lots. One is a corner, and it's pertaining to these small existing lots. One's a corner, and I also bought the one next to it. And what I want to do is I want to put in two townhomes that are joined. What could I do in that corner?
You own these 2, like these.
I own these 2 lots, but I'm going to have 2 townhomes that I want to have 2 kind of separate footprints. But I also want to possibly, could I join those together?
So in that instance, so that's a great scenario, because a townhome means that you would have a lot line like this in the middle, but for the purpose of development, we would sort of squint a little and ignore that interior lot line and the fact that you ultimately want 2 ownership parcels, and we'd be looking at your standards on your overall development parcel relative to your overall townhome footprint. And so in that case, you'd likely exceed the 60-foot threshold, and you would have this enhanced setback standard. Okay. And to take that scenario even further, because it's good to do that. I mean, code amendments apply to everywhere in the city, so we always want to try and vet all the what-ifs, because inevitably we're not going to foresee everything. But most of this neighborhood is owned single-family, so it'd be a rare instance. We have a provision that prohibits you from consolidating essentially multiple substandard lots for multifamily development unless multifamily development is the predominant adjacent land use. So it's unlikely that somebody could come in the few pockets in this area that are zoned R3, and we've actually had somebody call it earlier this week. You can't buy a bunch of them up to do multifamily in what is otherwise a single family neighborhood. But good scenario, keep them coming if you have more.
Thank you.
So what have the cases been from folks in this part of town who have run into this problem with the current code? What are some examples of type of work they're trying to do?
It's really addressing one single issue, is a home that is from the 1930s or older, and it's just outlived its useful life. It's way too small compared to what the contemporary home buyer wants. They want to scrape it, but it's currently, it's got setbacks that are in here, and as soon as you voluntarily scrape something, you have to meet current standards. Okay. So it's come up on 2 corner lots, and the citizen that's been most sort of vocal about it really wants to invest in the neighborhood, wants to, replace this outdated home, and they would have this area to build within, and they just think that it's creating an undue burden, because then their home is the exception from the neighborhood, if the neighborhood conditions are the rule.
So it's a question of meeting averages for new construction in terms of setbacks within the neighborhood, as opposed to meeting an average for a renovation, like or a new porch addition or something like that?
All of those types of additions, renovations, anything where you have some existing footprint and you're at least keeping some of it, those have a much easier path than building a new home.
Yeah, okay. All right. We hearing from anyone else on this?
I'll grab the list from the back real quick.
Okay. Great. Yeah, you can come on up, just give your name and address and your comments.
Hi, Larry Matthews, 3851 Hoyt Street. And I've been taking notes here, so usually I try and prepare more, so I'm a little more coherent, so bear with me as I jump around to my notes. The first question I had was, according to this summary, it says it has regulations that may create a burden. So I'm not sure if we have to create regulations that may create burdens and end up with 17 different situations that may someday create a burden. We try and write a law to what may or may not happen in the future. Second item I had was, yes, they can get exceptions. So it may not be as burdensome as we're trying to make it out to be. My third point was, at council meeting, they keep telling us that we have to have more low-income housing. Well, if these are small homes, it seems to me that those may be good starter homes that they tell us we have to have more of in this city. So do they really need to be bigger and more expensive houses? Do they need the exceptions? Third point, I'm really concerned about the thought that this applies to the whole city. And what brought this to mind to me is the new, what I call, I won't tell you what I call it, the row houses over on Depew. They're right up on the sidewalk. I don't know how they get by with having probably what looks to me about a 10 or 15 foot setback, but it's not much. They are right there. You got a little 3-foot strip of grass and about a 3-foot sidewalk, and then there's the edge of the buildings. So how do they get by without having a setback, and is that a substandard lot? Because I'm not sure how that particular development was laid out, if each of those houses is actually on a separate lot and if there's common areas somewhere else. So to say it won't ever happen again, I mean, I'm just looking at one right there. I took a picture of it today in regards to something else, and it's no setback. I mean, if you had all that up and down 38th, you'd be driving down a tunnel. So does that affect that type of situation, which I think I think she addressed that a little bit, but I'm just trying to get all my concerns out there, so while I'm here. I'm also a little concerned about if there's, how we control that in the future, if there is any in the rest of the city replatting that goes on. And there again, I think one of the council or board members addressed that a little bit, is if you wanted to go ahead and take 2 existing lots and combine something. That was my other concern, is if someone took a 200-foot or a 90-foot wide lot and wanted to make 2 45s out of it, all of a sudden over in West Ridge, we now have the same thing about having a setback that wouldn't conform to what we consider to be something less than substandard now. So how would we prevent the narrow lots, the so-called substandard lots, from occurring in the future in the rest of Wheat Ridge, in which case these new rules would apply? So those were some of my concerns, because if you see more of me, you'll see that I'm really kind of against high-density housing. And so, and everyone keeps trying to push high-density housing into the city. So those, I think, were my main points. Just in one case, she said something about when you're talking, you know, one of those scenarios I brought up about new narrow lots, she said we would, but I wasn't sure that it said the law says. And I didn't know if that was just going to be an objective or subjective part of staff planning and zoning as far as what they would or would not allow. So I think that answers all my questions. But in general, especially the part that scares me, is that it's going to apply to the whole rest of the city. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, thanks for your comments. Just to address some of these issues, can you speak a little bit to the difference on the Perrins Road development on Depew with that 0 setback, and how that scores with the zoning
Yeah.
elsewhere?
Just a couple of things. I know the language that you've used that we're pushing high-density housing, and I think we've talked about affordable housing. There's a lot of housing issues in the country and the metro area, and what I think council and the community is really pushing for is options in housing. The city has a lot of single-family and duplex properties where you have a yard and you have to maintain a yard, and we haven't had for a long time new market rate or affordable properties that give you other options, whether it's townhome, whether it's a apartment, whether it's a condo. And so in the case of 30th Avenue, which has come up several times tonight, that property the corridor is zoned mixed-use neighborhood. It's not zoned low-density residential. It's not zoned as a residential neighborhood. All of 30th Avenue, all of our commercial corridors in the city don't have setback requirements. They have build-to requirements where you can put your building at 0-foot setback, and you have a maximum setback. So on 30th Avenue, the farthest a property building is allowed to be from your property line, from the street, is 12 feet. So we want to promote more of a walkable area where you're not walking between a street with cars and a parking lot with cars. We're building an area where the buildings do come up to the street. I can appreciate how it would feel a little bit like a tunnel if everything was 3 stories. We don't anticipate that it would all be 3 stories, but that's how you end up with different building types and building forms, and that's why those properties are closer to the property lines, is because it's a very different zone district and a very different corridor. And then in terms of, what was I thinking? Would we end up with a scenario where we are creating substandard lots in other neighborhoods so that they could sort of cater to this exception? You know from looking at subdivision plats today and other evenings that we're looking at creating logical lot layouts that meet the minimum standard. So as you move further west in Wheat Ridge, the lot size and width requirements increase. West of Kipling, most of those neighborhoods are required to have 100 feet of lot width for single-family homes and 12,500 square feet. So it wouldn't be possible to you'd never be allowed to cut your lot to create a substandard property in those zone districts. Like I said, we've got a situation where we have a pattern of properties that were created at the size they are in the 1800s that didn't foresee sort of what the current zoning code said. So while there's no other way to create this exception other than to say it applies, to these zone districts and only to lots that are 60 feet or less. We don't create new lots to allow them to skirt the intent of the zoning code.
So in the scenario of worrying about splitting a large lot into a smaller lot to take advantage of these different setback rules, you'd have to literally rezone that property.
Right.
You'd have to change it from like an R1 to an R2 or R3.
Yeah, which is something that, spot zoning is what it's called. You can't legally change the zoning of a property if it's not compatible with the neighborhood. So in a situation like that, if somebody wanted a reduced setback on the other side of town where they have a full-size lot, the variance would be the appropriate route. There's not a pattern over there the same way that there is in these older subdivisions.
We'd have to, in other words, consider rezoning an entire neighborhood.
Yeah,
in order to,
which is pretty unlikely. But yes.
I've never seen it happen.
Nor have I.
Okay. More questions for staff?
I think the only question I have is, does the city know, I guess, some feedback from some of the people that purchase that road type housing? I mean, I know that I have a large yard, and it takes time to maintain that. Are these, and I know that those homes aren't necessarily cheap. Does the city have any understanding of what some of the current, what the market demands are, I guess, is what I'm driving at?
Yeah, I mean, real estate market demands are really national trends that Denver's following. Millennials want a different housing product than people wanted 20 years ago. They want to save, they're not making as much money. They don't have as much disposable income. They want a smaller footprint from a sustainability and financial perspective. They don't want to maintain yards because they're hanging out elsewhere. Empty nesters, we've got a lot of folks who have been in Wheat Ridge for a really long time who admittedly don't love density, but also don't want to stay in their 9,000 square foot lot and are looking for something in between. And some of these other housing options are attractive sort of across all demographics. The project on Depew and 38th is sold out entirely, and they just got their first CO on their first unit last week. So if that is any indication of the demand, the fact that they've sold out before they've finished construction is pretty positive.
Any more questions? All right, yeah, I'm sorry,
No,
did
I
you
have no questions.
Okay. Then I think we're ready for a motion, one sort or another.
I move, make a recommended motion here. Move to recommend approval of the proposed ordinance amending Articles 2 and 6 of Chapter 26 of the Code of Laws concerning residential side and rear yard setbacks.
We have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. Any further discussion? Okay, I'll call for a vote then.
Motion is approved, 6-0.
Okay. Do we have any other items?
It says exhibits.
We don't have any other items. Well, I guess we have a couple. Do you know if we're having our next meeting?
I don't know.
We're not having our next meeting, so you can have your Thursday night back. We've had some staffing changes again in it seems every summer. Our planner 2, Sarah White, I don't know if you guys met some of her. She has moved on to the city of Denver. She knew specifically what type of planning she wanted to do, and they are more they're not as generalized as we are, so she's with the city of Denver. And our planner 1 has decided to take a totally different career path route. So if you know anybody who's interested in being a planner 2, the position is posted on the website right now. And we hope to be interviewing in the next couple of weeks, so we can try and get back up to full staff again.
Wow,
But,
okay, big changes. Okay, I just want to welcome our new District 1 Commissioner Dirk Bowden. This is your first meeting, right? Yeah, welcome. And our new District 4 Commissioner Pam Olson. This is your first one. Welcome. And I'd love to thank the entire commission for voting me chair when I wasn't here. I appreciate that. I appreciate that very much. And I'm happy to do it. Okay, I guess we are ready to adjourn if someone has a motion.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, vote please.
That motion is approved, 6-0.
All right, thanks everybody.